conservation organization. We're dedicated to promoting the protection, enjoyment, and understanding of the mountains, forests, waters, and trails. In Maine, we're a landowner. We own and manage 70,000 acres of land in Piscataquis County to the east of Moosehead Lake in the 100-mile wilderness. And we focus our initiatives there on outdoor recreation, resource protection, sustainable forestry, and community partnerships. We've been involved in this issue before I started working with AMC. We were engaged back with 1853. We opposed the draft rules submitted by the DEP in 2014, and we're still concerned with the statewide implications of opening up mining development under these weak rules. We are encouraged by this bill today, and my testimony includes a couple of our key provisions of Representative Chapman's bill that we support. We support standards regulating the effect of groundwater quality. Of course, water quality as a recreation organization is a huge component of what we're concerned about. We like that Representative Chapman's bill requires a permittee to plan for geological stability. We like the independent third-party financial assurance piece. And we also really like the part of allowing the department several well-defined decision points. I think that allows for continuous check-in and compliance monitoring. Our biggest thing, as you know, we've been here a couple times, is that mining development in Maine must not threaten water quality, must not require perpetual treatment, must not impact our natural resources and habitat, and must not put Maine taxpayers on the hook. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. I would assume you probably wrote your testimony before the department testified.
Yep.
They point out where some of the language in the bill is similar to what's in the rules.
Sure.
Have you looked at them side by side to decide if you agree or disagree?
I have not looked at 750 side by side with the proposed rules, but I'm looking forward to finding the department's testimony and looking at that for myself.
Do it together.
Sure. Thanks.
And add to that, I would hope that certainly the last two bullet points that you would spend time and look at what the good lawyer, I said good Jamie if you're listening, that Jamie Kilbert sent us on financial insurance.
Sure. I saw that this morning. Really looking forward to digging in with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nick Bennett. And then Anthony, and then we're done, I think. Oh, Ben, you're going to go after Anthony. Okay. And Jeff. All right, Jeff, you go after Nick. And then we'll go to Anthony and Ben. Come right up.
Morning? No, not morning.
By 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, Senator Saviello, Representative Welsh, members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Nick Bennett. I'm the staff scientist for the Natural Resources Council of Maine. We do support LD 750. We support taking another 2 years and coming back with good rules. That's consistent with the testimony that we gave on LD 146, and we attached a list to LD 146 of the things that we thought needed to change with those rules in order for us to support them, and we stand by that list. There are some overlapping areas with LD 750. We're comfortable with those too, and if you want to add some of the things that aren't in that list, we're fine, but as I said, we're fine with that, but as I said to Senator Saviello about a month ago, if you do what's in that list of 13 items, we'll support going forward. We do think, however, that the best way to do that is to give direction to DEP and have them come back with a new set of rules rather than just amending the rules. So giving DEP direction through statute and coming back with the rules. So I think with that, I'm gonna stop. Just leave my testimony on LD 750 very general, but I do want to try to clarify an issue that came up a lot earlier today about whether or not there is some risk to waiting for another couple of years because we've got the old Chapter 200 rules and a couple of provisions in the LD 1853 statute that seem to contradict what's in the Chapter 200 rules that are in effect now. I do not believe that's an issue. It is an issue, by the way, that LD 1750 would address, because it provides for a moratorium until new rules come back. So if people are worried about that, that's something you can do. But some attorneys who testified on this issue last year in front of the committee, I think, did a very thorough analysis of why the standards in LD 1853, in particular, the standard that allows contamination of groundwater within and under the mining area, do not apply and do not overrule the standards of the existing Chapter 200 rules, and that in fact LD 1853 specifically states that until new rules are adopted by the legislature, the standards in the Chapter 200 rules that are existing apply. So I'm going to hand that out for folks to look at. I have, I think, 21 copies here, and with that, I'll close my testimony.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Reardon. I live in Manchester, and I'm here today representing Trout Unlimited, as usual. I think this is the 5th time I've been in front of this committee
Maybe 2 more after this, I'm sure.
on the mining issue, and maybe not the last. We'll certainly have some work sessions to come. Essentially, I'm here again with the same message. As you'll remember, when I testified on LD 146, I suggested that I thought there were some changes to statute you should make and send this back to DEP for rulemaking. I think essentially that's the guts of what LD 750 would do, and we're still supportive of that approach. I just, without repeating it, I think Nick's statement on the need for a moratorium coincides with my thoughts on this. It's sort of I'm not sure that's necessary. But if you have a concern about what happens in the interim period, the moratorium would be one way to deal with it until final rules are adopted. Just a couple of things I want to touch on. First of all, a fair amount was made earlier about the potential economic benefits of mining. I want to point out that the Maine Office of Tourism and the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries completed a report last summer. I can email this to everybody on the committee. I didn't print copies because it's 16 or 18 pages.
One copy's fine.
Okay. But the upshot of it was that, number one, if you ask anglers what they want to come fish for here in Maine, brook trout's at the top of the list for both resident and non-resident anglers, and that generates over $200 million a year in direct expenditures by anglers, $105 million in income for Maine workers, and $319 million in total economic activity. So it's not like mining and the potential impacts of mining on brook trout that I've talked about a lot before are balanced against no value on the other side. That brook trout resource is an enormous, it's a remarkable resource for the state of Maine, and it's an economic driver and has been for 150 years. What I want to touch on before my time runs out is the changes that I think are needed in statute. Mr. Fitzgerald made an argument, I think maybe a good one, about this idea of requiring stability. As you'll remember, I suggested that should be an approval criterion, that the mining company demonstrate up front that when they leave the site, they will leave behind a site that is geologically, and I won't read all the language I have here. What I think is important, and I think what addresses Mr. Fitzgerald's concern, is that you include language to the effect that the site post-mining should be similar to the site pre-mining. So yes, there may be faults on it, Yes, there may be high arsenic levels that were background before mining started, but at the end of the time, things should be no worse than that. The other things that I think are necessary, mining activity unit and mining area, we've talked about that quite a lot. I think that's a change you could make in statute. And there was some discussion earlier about in situ mining. I don't know much about block caving, but what I have learned about in situ mining makes me think we should treat that like we already did heap leaching, because I think it raises the same risks. And my time's gone.
Thank you. Questions for Jeff? Representative Shane.
Thank you, Senator. When we're talking about the stability of what's left behind, the geologic stability, is it primarily tailings ponds or wet units we're talking about? Is that the really big issue?
Well, I think from my perspective, if you're leaving behind those wet mine waste units, I think by definition they're not stable, because if something goes wrong, the chemical reaction is going to happen, and if that whatever or if you have a hydrologic, the dam fails, you're releasing those things and they cause damage. So that's not stable by definition. However, I think for essentially a landfill unit, so let's say you don't have a storage pond, instead, and I think this is something you should look at, a couple people mentioned earlier, kind of dry stacking wastes, which I understand in wet environments like Alaska, some mining companies are moving towards it, or maybe they're looking at that in British Columbia as well. But you still have the potential, if those aren't done right, there's a chemical reaction going on, maybe sealed between 2 layers of clay or 2 impermeable layers, but if it leaks, you've got a problem. I think from the 2 concerns that I have about stability, number 1 is what's left behind is non-reactive. It's no longer creating waste that if it escapes is going to cause a problem. And number 2, that you're restoring hydrologic balance that existed beforehand, so that you're not radically changing the hydrology of local lakes and streams.
All right. Others? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben? No, let Ben go and maybe you can close it out.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the public that I missed? Anybody else? We have to need the for or against. Is anybody here to need the for or against? Some I doubt that. That's all. You? Oh, Tom? Okay.
I'm not in that category, but I would like to speak for.
You gotta be one of the other categories, so you'll be opposed, okay. So Anthony, Ben, and Tom.
Good afternoon, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, members of the committee. My name is Ben Gillen. I am from Gorham, and I represent the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Here to deliver our testimony in opposition to LD 750. The Maine State Chamber of Commerce is a statewide business association made up of a network of 5,000 businesses. I'd like to make 3 quick points. You've heard a lot today in regards to this legislation that concerns us. Number 1 is the moratorium provision. Anytime we see a moratorium provision for any industry, it raises a huge red flag for the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. The message that sends to not only businesses here in Maine, but businesses outside of the state of Maine. The second point I'd like to say is the first time I testified on this legislation back in the 125th was in March of 2011. It is March of 2015. That's 4 years' time we've been working on this. We think that's plenty of time. We support the rulemaking and the rules that are currently presented by the Department of Environmental Protection. The last point I'd like to make real quickly, and it developed as I was listening today, we've heard a lot of comments about the use of the precautionary principle in terms of rulemaking. I'd like just to point out during the last legislative session, the 126, Representative Boland had a bill in regards to the use of the precautionary principle in terms of rulemaking. That bill was resoundingly rejected. It was like 125 to 20-something during the 126 legislature. Just to point that out, so there is precedent in terms of using the precautionary principle for rulemaking here in the state of Maine. It was just the last legislative session, so take that into consideration. I'll yield back a minute 30 of my time unless you have any questions.
Questions for Ben? Good job, Ben.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Good morning, Senator Saviello, Representative Walsh, members of the committee. My name is Anthony Howerhan. I represent Mystic Resources, a company with an interest to potentially mining here in the state of Maine. I stand before you this morning to urge you to vote ought not to pass on LD 750. First of all, the fact that LD 750 is looking to place a moratorium on mining is not required. By the very nature of the 1991 rules, there has been a moratorium on mining in the state for the last 24 years. The fact that the state has passed a new metallic mining law in 2012, however, has failed to adopt rules to go along with it, by the very essence, creates a moratorium, or at least the basis for a lengthy litigation battle, of which we've heard differing opinions on here today. Part of the reason LD 750 is not required is when I look at the LD 750 versus LD 146, I believe much of the content that Representative Chapman is seeking in this bill exists in LD 146 today. The draft rules before the committee now for consideration: any permit holder must comply with all federal environmental laws. All remediation costs are paid by the permittee. There must be a plan for closure before the issuance of the permit. Geological stabilization is also referenced in LD 146. So I believe all the pertinent issues are in the existing rules before you today. The proposal to have decision points within the permit to allow for changes or cancel the permit creates uncertainty for a mine developer. The permit should focus on the outcomes of environmental compliance, such as water quality, dust mitigation, all the others that are outlined in these rules. The currently proposed rules allow the DEP to suspend the permit if an operator is not in compliance. The permit holder and the department will work together if changes are required to ensure compliance. But part of what was changed in the 2012 statute was, if you recall, a permit was issued for 5 years. You're talking about permit investments of up to $800 to $1 billion potentially. So having the ability to change the permit partway through, we believe puts those investments in jeopardy. So I thank the committee for your time this morning, and I urge you not to pass, ought not to pass on LD 750.
Questions for Andrew? Representative Shane.
Thank you, Senator. Trying to refresh my memory on what it is that has prevented mining for the last 24 years because of the old rules. My recollection is it's the groundwater standard, the fact that you need multiple permits from different regulatory agencies.
Correct. So the groundwater standard, the multiple permit issue, the issue around a 5-year permit, was a big one, as well as the financial assurity had to be held in cash, I believe, in the 1991 rules. I'm going from memories.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
But those are the big ones that I remember.
Okay, thanks.
Anthony, a question has come up in some of the testimony. If I recall the rules right, is every year you actually have to sit down with the DEP, explain what your next steps are going to be, and the financial assurance could be adjusted based on that change? Have I read that right?
That's my taking of it as well, and I'm by no means a lawyer. Maybe Tom Doyle could help you more, but my understanding is that through the course of the discussions that happened was that you would meet once a year with the department. You'd review where you're at in the process, both of opening but also of closing. Because most responsible mines today, the closure doesn't happen at the end, it happens as you're going, wherever possible, both from an environmental perspective, but also from a financial point of view. It's in the builder's best interest to do that.
And have you looked at Mr. Kilbert's change on the financial assurance that he has suggested to us?
I've looked at it. I've asked some of the experts, if you will, that are working with us, including Jim Butler, to have a look and see if there's any material changes of that.
And then the one that actually Representative Shane and I have kind of gone around and around, and now we think we understand a mining activity and recognizing that we have to do a little better definition. And it talks about water quality. The monitoring well has to be located right inside the activity. Is that your interpretation correct?
Well, my understanding is that, and it always gets complicated, the monitoring versus compliance
Right, I'm
points.
talking monitoring.
So monitoring, my understanding is best practice, you would want monitoring wells in the activity as well as at different gradients out to the compliance point to ensure that whatever treatment or whatever activities you're undertaking or getting you to that compliance point. Because once you get to the compliance point, if you're not there, you're in breach of permit.
Other questions? Thank you. Anybody else after Mr. Doyle? If you do, then you're in trouble. Okay.
Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, members of the committee, my name is Tom Doyle. I'm with Pierce Atwood. I live in Falmouth and represent Aroostook Resources. I didn't plan on speaking today, but one thing that came up about LD 750 is this sort of conceptual change that is being proposed from punishment to prevention. And I just think that's incorrect. I've been working in the area of environmental law here in Maine for over 30 years and have permitted a number of large projects over that period of time. And the very sort of bedrock principle of Maine environmental law is that its standards and the statutes and the rules are based on prevention of environmental contamination and protection of public health and safety. And that runs throughout our statutes. And this mining statute and mining rules are no different in that regard. And that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Question for Tom. Do you want to weigh in on the statute versus the rules, since I got you up here? Is your opinion?
Statutes trump rules. So the 2012 statute is in effect. And I think the way, if someone brought an application forward, it would be messy, but the department would have to determine which of the 1991 rules are consistent with the statute and which are not. And when it's inconsistent, then you have to apply the statute, and then they apply the rest of the rules that are not inconsistent with the 2012 statute.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that I missed? Anybody that's for or against? If not, we'll close the hearing. And so the committee will come back, plan to be back here about 2:15. We'll go into work session on the ethanol bill and a little bit of interpretation on the
Good to see you feeling better. Yeah. I wish I was feeling better. You're not good? Well, off the prednisone yet? No, and I'm totally hooked on it. Prednisone's awful. I have to say, it is very effective at relieving disc pain. Because I'm not.
Oh yeah, it does all kinds of things. My cough is gone.
Yeah.
The psoriasis I've had for 40 years went away. It'll come back.
Nick, today? Yeah, I just heard about it online. So you think they'll do that this afternoon? Or? Okay. Should I check back at 2:15 and maybe you'll have an update? We're doing pre-work. That's starting at 2:15.
A number of them are going to appropriations. They're supposed to be working at the ENR related budget at one. So my candidate, they're not going to get my one, and it's going to drag on later. They probably won't get that today.
I remember answering the question there.
Okay. Well, I'll check back this afternoon and see what it is.
When I'm there.
Are you guys staying? Go ahead. I wasn't sure.
I keep waiting for
You were minion. So you get into your fiance. I don't know. Are you going up to oh, you are? I mean, this is true. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I have everyone. Yeah, that's what Al Smith. No, Al. I bumped into Al. I haven't seen Ryan. No, his father. He's the one. He said that Ryan was bringing in stuff. Yeah. I'm gonna go see Lindsay.
They don't fix the statute, they refer to it on time of the law.
I think he's done a good job of arguing. I think he's wanted a couple of
The statute
The statute takes
but then you're not specific, so then you have to.
Good job to get.
I know.
For what? Not questions.